All right, how many of you out there have been in your fantasy football draft room? Click that draft button and you were excited because you landed one of the big name players that you've wanted all offseason. And then just a few short weeks into the regular season, you find yourself looking at your roster like this. And all you can say is, what the What's going on, Headliner Nation? Jake Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking about big names to avoid during your 2019 fantasy football draft. This is not a bust video. I'm not saying these guys are going to suck all year. That's not the purpose. The purpose of this video is to try to point out a few guys that are a little bit overvalued. We do have more, but let's be realistic. It's July, and I need things to talk about for the next 2 months, so we're going to do one per position here. And if I give you any information that you didn't know or that you enjoy, maybe you just enjoy the show, do me a favor. Please hit that like button. Those likes really help us out here on YouTube. If this video can get over 1,000 likes, like usual, I'm going to give away 2 draft guides. 2 draft guides, over 1,000 likes. Can you guys do it? You've done it before. Let's do it again. Nothing but great results and feedback coming back from the people who've actually purchased the draft guide. They really enjoy it. But now, let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about 4 big name players we need to avoid in 2019. All right, any takers on the quarterback? You guys got a guess of who it may be? I think you may have an idea. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's been a big speculation this offseason of what do we do with Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people don't care that he's a quarterback. They want to draft him early. Really, though, it's all about the price, and we've been preaching value on this channel for weeks, and I just don't know if I could pay that third-round ADP for a quarterback. It's just too high in my opinion. I don't want to pay for last year's production. We know he'll be without Tyreek Hill for a certain amount of time. We don't know the exact length yet. There's been rumors that'll be a 4-game max suspension, but still that's up in the air. There is no for sure. There's never been a quarterback in history that's ever had back-to-back 50-touchdown seasons. In fact, in the history of the NFL, it's only happened 3 times total. Peyton Manning did it in 2013 with 55 touchdowns. In 2007, Brady did it with 50. And then we had Mahomes' 50 spot last year. Now, I know everyone expects some slight regression, and losing Hill for a few games really doesn't help that argument. But even a slight regression is still a great season. I mean, I don't think anybody, myself included, and anybody else out there, would be really disappointed at the end of the 2019 season if Patrick Mahomes ends with 4,800 yards and 45 touchdown passes. That's still a great season. However, that would give him 41 less fantasy points for 2019 than he had in 2018. Does that all of a sudden bring him back down into the right stratosphere with the other top-tier quarterbacks? I mean, if you take the 2018 point finishers for the quarterback position, he would still finish as the number 1 quarterback even if he lost those 41 points. But now, the spread between him and the number 2 quarterback, which was 163 points, is now only 22 points higher. Really brings him closer to the rest of that competition. The difference, though, is you can get some of these other quarterbacks a couple of rounds later. Like Matt Ryan is a great example and somebody we've talked about a lot on this channel. You can get him 4 rounds after Patrick Mahomes, and there could be only, a 20-point gap or so? I mean, a lot of people like Matt Ryan this year. Add all that together, and he also has the hardest strength of schedule among all quarterbacks this season. And not to mention a potential fantasy football championship matchup against the Chicago Bears. I'm just going to have to pass on Patrick Mahomes this year. I think he still has a great season, but I think the gap between him and the other top-tier quarterbacks is a lot closer in 2019, and I'm not willing to pay that high premium on draft day with a third-round pick. All right, moving on to running back, and I'm pretty sure everyone and their mother out there watching right now expects this to be Todd Gurley. Everybody's talking about Todd Gurley. Everybody wants to avoid him here. And I may be with the consensus there also. However, in this show, we're talking LeVeon Bell of the Jets. And I don't know if you checked it out earlier in the week. Ryan, one of our other creators here for the channel, put out some pretty good points about LeVeon Bell. And it's really something that people need to think about. I mean, what do you realistically expect from LeVeon Bell here in 2019? Do you expect him to be the same player that, in New York that he was when he was in Pittsburgh? Are you expecting the same volume, the same production? If so, you could be pretty disappointed in 2019. You're going to have to take him in the end of the first, start of the second round. But is that really a smart idea? Have you looked at the schedule for him to start the season? This is something that Ryan pointed out in the video earlier in the week. The first 8 weeks, he has games against Buffalo, Cleveland, 2 against New England, Philadelphia, Dallas, Jacksonville, and a bye week. That's about as bad of an 8-game stretch as he can possibly get to start the season. That's why for LeVeon Bell, we're kind of recommending him as a buy low candidate. There is a buy low window that could potentially be there for LeVeon Bell this year. Now, the owners of LeVeon will have invested a very early round pick. And after the first couple weeks, if he is disappointing, if the team is struggling, if he's not producing, they're going to start getting frustrated and rely back to all those things that they heard about in the preseason about, it's not the same Le'Veon Bell. He's not the same guy in Pittsburgh. You may be able to swoop in there and make a trade offer for Le'Veon Bell during the weeks 6 through 8-ish. Somewhere right around in there is when you need to start making your move. But why would you want to do that? Well, because after week 8, good Lord, the schedule gets even better. He's got matchups against Miami twice, the Giants, the Raiders, the Bengals, and a revenge game against the Steelers week 16 championship week at home. As for draft day, though, it's just a little bit too spendy. I don't want to pay that premium price to then turn around and get a crappy 8-week schedule. Let somebody else pay that premium. Let them get the struggle bus the first few weeks of the season. You swoop in, make a decent offer, and get yourself Le'Veon Bell with a great schedule second half of the season. That could be some huge value, not to mention something that could possibly win you a fantasy football championship. But as far as draft day goes, I'm avoiding Le'Veon Bell. All right, I can almost guarantee you won't guess who this wide receiver is. He may not be big name enough for you, but his ADP is still a little bit too high, so we need to talk about him. It's Cooper Kupp, wide receiver of the Los Angeles Rams, and I really hate to do this. I like Cooper Kupp a lot. I like his role in that offense with the Rams a lot. But he's coming off a torn ACL that just happened mid-November of last year. Now, typically, even the best case scenarios take a full year to recover. I mean, to get back to 100% game speed, best case scenarios is a year. He's not even going to have that year. And his game is built off being quick and shifty and yards after the catch. He's not one of these big-bodied, sit-down in space type of big wide receivers. We talked about it in an earlier video this week on Dalvin Cook, right? Sometimes coming off of an ACL injury can weaken the hamstrings, resulting in an increased chance of injury. Could that be Cooper Kupp this year? Maybe that's why we didn't see an explosive Allen Robinson last year also, coming off of that torn ACL. Maybe he takes a step forward this year. But Cooper Kupp just doesn't have that time to get back to 100%. I know we've already seen videos of him out there in OTAs and running, and he looks great. But the Rams have already come out and said they want to bring him along slowly. So we cannot get too excited too early. The Rams really need him. They could use him down the stretch to make a playoff run. He's a big part of their offense. He may be another one of these buy low type of guys, right? Kind of like Le'Veon Bell. Let somebody else invest that high draft pick on him. You swoop in a few weeks into the season. Maybe if he's not producing, you can get him on the cheap. And if he starts to turn it on late in the season, kind of like we saw with Dalvin Cook last year, you could have a healthy Cooper Kupp carry you to a playoff run in your fantasy football league. It all depends if you can get him for cheaper. Now, when you factor in that he's a 5th round ADP right now, there's too many other wide receivers around him during the fantasy football draft right now that I would rather have that are a little bit more safe, in my opinion, right there in the 5th round. You got Tyler Boyd, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Godwin, just to name a few, that I would rather start my season with just to be safe. We don't know what to expect from Cooper Kupp, and until we do, until we can see him perform at a high level, I'm going to avoid him on draft day here in 2019. All right, here we go. Time to talk a tight end, the football kind, that we're going to avoid in 2019, and it may not be a big surprise, but it's Eric Ebron, tight end of the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm sure a lot of people may be expecting this also. There's a lot of people either on the bandwagon or completely off with Eric Ebron. And to me, the last thing I want to do is come into 2019 and expect to get the Eric Ebron of 2018. He had a great season last year, not taking anything away from that, but he benefited a lot from injuries throughout the entire receiving core of the Indianapolis Colts. The last thing you want to do in fantasy football is buy a player's touchdown total from the previous season. You can't expect touchdown totals, from year to year to year. They can fluctuate so much on a year-to-year basis. If you come in here and expect double-digit touchdowns from Eric Ebron, you may be overly disappointed. But it's really hard, like I said, to go in here and say to avoid a tight end. There's like 6 of them that are like worth a crap in fantasy football. So for me to come out here and say to avoid one on draft day, in my opinion, there's just some options that are a little bit later on that may give you similar value, and you can use this pick as a more depth at the running back or wide receiver position. We know that Jack Motherfucking Doyle is coming back. We know that Mo Alley Cox, which is another awesome name to say, has been involved in first-team reps here in OTAs, and he looks absolutely great. We know they brought in Devin Funchess. He may be utilized in the red zone, taking away some of those targets for Ebron. Doesn't mean Funchess is going to catch it. Why? He has trouble catching. But, it just says that there's possibilities of other options in the red zone, and that's why I am not on the Eric Ebron bandwagon this year. Now, with a 6th-round ADP in your fantasy football drafts, personally, I would rather just wait another round or two and go after Vance McDonald of the Pittsburgh Steelers. In my opinion, he has a bigger target share in an offense that's going to be looking for more offensive weapons, and he just doesn't have that competition that we're going to see with Eric Ebron, but yet the same amount of upside is there. Not taking anything away from Ebron. Great year last year, just too expensive, and I'm not buying his production from last year. All right, so those were a few of my big name players that I'm avoiding on draft day here in 2019 for fantasy football. But this is an interactive channel. We respond to every comment on every video. I want to know your opinion. Who are you avoiding in 2019 fantasy football? I know there's some more popular names out there like the AJ Greens and Todd Gurley's. A lot of people are avoiding them this season. I get it. I understand it. Trying to give a little bit of different perspective on some different names here. Trying to keep it fresh. It's only July. We got a lot to talk about here over the next few months, but we greatly appreciate that support. Make sure you're hitting that like button. Once we hit 1,000 likes on this video, I'm going to give away 2 free draft guides to somebody who leaves a comment down in the comment section. So leave that comment, hit that like button, get yourself a free draft guide, and it is a ton of fantasy football information, almost 500 pages worth. Greatly appreciate your support. You guys have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.